What's up guys, welcome back. This is Anime Fiction. You'll be watching What If Naruto Fused with the Mind Stone in Marvel, Part 4. Now, let's begin. Naruto's perspective. Faced with what I had to say, Sarah had no choice than to accept my proposal. What alternative options were available to her? Returning to her previous life before the facility is not an option, as they would locate her, eliminate her, and reclaim their ex-23. I represented her most reliable option, and the reality that we operated as an independent team, notably the Avengers, made the proposition more appealing to her. The rationale behind Naruto's reliance on her was straightforward. Although calculations and rapid processing capabilities were advantageous, they could not surpass the creativity of the human intellect. Naruto was created by individuals, after all. I did not possess the highest level of intelligence in the presence of exceptionally bright individuals. Additionally, while I have the capability to create entities to accomplish any task I desire, it would lead me to resemble Ultron, as I might begin to believe that I no longer require human involvement. Regarding Laura, despite her composed exterior, her emotions were quite vivid, allowing me to anticipate her decision when faced with the choice between leading a conventional life or utilizing her abilities effectively. What is our current status? Sarah asked after she confirmed that she and her daughter were out of harm's way. At this moment, we are navigating the hallways following Laura's departure into sleep, which has left Sarah and me to continue our discussion in solitude. You are at liberty to pursue your own choices. She responded with a subtle scoff. Indeed, technicalities. She then regarded me and prompted. What are your expectations from me beyond my expertise and support as a geneticist? In light of the unclear nature of your statements, there is little to address. I require your description of yourself in those roles, whether as a subordinate, an underling, or an assistant. Those remarks do not reflect the sentiments typically associated with a hero. At this point, I found myself unable to suppress a scoff. Heroes are also human. However, that is not the case. I paused and met her gaze, and she mirrored my action, yet I could sense the subtle rhythm of her heart beating erratically. She exhibited a sense of nervousness, while maintaining an air of confidence. What led you to that conclusion? Was it my appearance, my voice, or my evident extraordinary abilities? I found it difficult to maintain my composed demeanor in response to the look of complete confusion on her face as she struggled to determine if I was being sarcastic or genuinely curious. I am eager to collaborate with you, Sarah Kinney. I departed for Davis, who remained unconscious, without awaiting her response. As Naruto was fulfilling Davis' conditions, the world was engulfed in turmoil following the public disclosure of General Ross' death. This revelation was accompanied by reports speculating on the circumstances surrounding his demise and the individuals implicated in the matter. What was once considered an urban legend has now emerged as a prominent subject in international newspaper headlines. The emergence of the new human. The New York Times and the Daily Bugle participated in a vigorous discussion regarding the characteristics of the newly discovered human species, the accuracy of the information disseminated, and the implications this will have on global dynamics and the evolution of modern warfare. As the media engaged in heated debates and extensive discussions, clandestine organizations were proactively strategizing to adjust to the evolving landscape of public society. A meeting was being conducted in one of these organizations to assess the advantages and opportunities that could arise from this open disclosure. A group of 10 individuals, comprising both men and women, convened in a chamber, each adorned with the finest jewelry and attire that wealth could procure. This room was replete with gold, diamonds, fine silk, and an array of other luxurious materials in great abundance. Each individual present exuded an aura of nobility, yet their true nature was quite the opposite. At the head of the table sat a man and a woman, each representing a stark contrast to the other. The man was dressed in all black adorned with gold embroideries, while the woman wore an all-white dress that was quite revealing, clinging to her figure in a manner that could be described as provocative. The Hellfire Club. The reason for our gathering at this moment is clear and requires no repetition. Sebastian Shaw, the man in black, serves as the Black King of the Hellfire Club and holds the position of the highest-ranking member. The existence of the mutant species has been recognized for some time, Shaw. The primary issue is that the attention they are receiving at this time is not beneficial for any of us. A tall man with blonde hair spoke in a soft voice that might have been perceived as feminine, were it not for the aged undertone it possessed. Edward Buckman, known as the White King of the Hellfire Club, addressed the audience. He then directed his attention to the young woman seated to his left. What is your perspective, Emma? Seated to the right of Sebastian Shaw was Emma Frost, known as the White Queen of the Hellfire Club. I hold the view that it is not of significant importance. It was inevitable that such a secret could not be contained solely by us, and it was only a matter of time before it was revealed. We must focus on identifying the source of the leak and understanding the intentions behind it. Emma Frost expressed her perspective. Contrary to common belief and the awareness of many, the Hellfire Club was an exclusive organization for the elite and influential individuals who played a significant role in shaping the global economy. A select group of the club's most esteemed members were mutants, concealed from their human counterparts. It was through this influence that they galvanized the current mutant community, yet the unexpected revelation was something none of them anticipated. Shaw glanced at Emma momentarily before concurring with her statements, alongside Edward Buckman. Shaw then addressed Buckman. I believe Ross' death has significantly impacted your confidential project. I heard another one of your bases were destroyed. Buckman snarled as he remembered the news he got a few hours ago, and even now he was still having a hard time believing that his Project Armageddon was being delayed due to these setbacks. It's the work of a blasted mutant. With patience, I will position them exactly as I desire. If he had paid attention at the moment he said those words, he would have caught the faces of a few members darkening in sneer. In an expansive mansion in Salem that served as a boarding school for the public, Professor Charles Xavier, a highly regarded anthropologist and psychiatrist with numerous PhDs, sat in his office alongside several educators and a furry ape man. You conveyed a sense of urgency in your call, Charles. What seems to be the issue? Hank McCoy inquired as he took a seat alongside the others present in the room. Aurora Monroe, known as Storm, possesses striking white hair and blue eyes. The compact, rugged, and bearded James Howlett, Wolverine. The steadfast and robust Pyotr Peter Rasputin, known as Colossus. Among those assembled, the youngest is Scott Summers, known as Cyclops, who is distinguished by his visor. Charles' wheelchair advanced smoothly with a simple press of a button on the armrest, transitioning from the rear of his desk to the front of his instructors. A topic has recently been brought into discussion following the passing of General Ross, which I believe serves merely as a pretext, and it pertains to us mutants. The silence in the room spoke volumes, as the others quickly discerned that the situation was far from favorable. It pertains to the government in question. Charles offered a subtle smile as he observed them already bracing for unwelcome news. It has not yet been enacted as legislation, but there are calls for a mutant act's right, duty, and obligation. Basically, it's putting the mutant in the face of the public. While I appreciate your perspective, it's clear that the reality may not be as favorable as it is presented. We would appreciate it if you could share that with us, Chuck. Logan stated with his arms crossed firmly. Charles nodded, and this time, the previously reserved expression on his face was replaced with a more assertive demeanor as he presented the caveat that some individuals might respond negatively to. The proposal requires all mutants to register, or re-register, as citizens, granting the state the authority to monitor all mutants within the country and evaluate their potential threat levels. Although it has not yet been scheduled for a hearing in the Senate, this encapsulates the main point. The atmosphere in the office significantly declined, resembling a descent into a frigid environment. All individuals present here possessed intelligence, including the young Scott Summers. Being one of the proactive front of the mutant kind, they knew firsthand what sort of games the government was more likely to play when given access to superpowered individuals. This appears to be concerning. Indeed, many individuals are likely to register. Conflicts are likely to arise, and I can foresee them stating that individuals who decline to sign will be regarded as offenders. Regardless of how unpleasant the idea may be, I must acknowledge that it was executed well. Aurora has strong opinions. Colossus regarded her, a look of confusion clearly displayed on his face. Could you please clarify how this is done? She then explained, given the nature of the act and its specific targeting of mutants, the individuals who will be engaged in the fight are mutants. Individuals who wish to sign and those who do not. Those in authority need not take action as the mutant community descends into internal conflict. The Civil War. Charles interjected. Logan contemplated the matter, his thoughts drifting towards some of the students in the school. It is likely that some of them would sign. He spoke in a whisper, yet it was undoubtedly audible to all present. Could you clarify the reasons behind their interest in signing? Scott stated emphatically. The room fell silent at his question, as the discomfort of the known answers weighed heavily on everyone present. They aimed to re-engage with the community, to their families, and pursue the life they envisioned. Becoming a mutant necessitated their concealment until societal acceptance was achieved. Now, as the concept was poised to be presented to the public, and with the illusion of choice to reintegrate as open citizens, it was evident that many, if not most, would opt to sign it. Recognizing the lack of progress with the current line of questioning, Hank shifted the discussion to a different topic. What is the status of the mutants alleged to have killed Ross? Have they determined the identity of the individual involved? Charles pressed several buttons on his chair to establish a connection with the room's TV, effectively directing their focus towards it. I successfully obtained the files from a colleague in Congress, and here is the report from several soldiers stationed at the base. They examined it for several minutes and observed a few details within it. No one was aware of how he arrived, and there were no recordings of him until he seemingly materialized from nowhere. Additionally, bullets ricochet off his skin. Additionally, energy projection. Logan indicated. Teleportation, superhuman strength, and energy projection. Sounds pretty amazing. Those are some impressive skills for just one person. Hank said as he took a quick look at the reports. Are we really sure he isn't one of Magneto's? Scott asked, but Charles just shook his head. He didn't completely rule it out, though. I'll see what I can do about tracking down this mutant. Just keep doing what you're doing until we hear more about this. With that, Charles rolled out of the room, focused on the task ahead. Naruto's perspective. I watched Davis as he slowly opened his eyes, blinking a couple of times before shutting them again. He reached for the blanket, pulling it closer to snuggle in for a cozier sleep. He jumped out of bed with urgency as his eyes scanned every inch of the room before landing on me. I suppose the best way to say it is good morning. I sat down in front of him, my voice steady, while he observed me closely, like a hawk, paying attention to every little move I made. Hey, who are you? Where am I? He asked while scanning the room for all the possible escape routes. Like the huge sliding glass door that covered a large section of the room. I didn't really pay much attention to his scrutiny. Part of my mind was busy sifting through all the data I had after checking in with my body, while another part was focused on Davis. Hey there. I'm Naruto, and I brought you here. So, where exactly is here? Upstate New York. What? I let out a sigh because he was getting it, so I thought I'd explain it a bit more. I rescued you from the base you were kept in and brought you here to try and save you, whatever of you remained that is. He glanced at me with a bit of uncertainty before making his way to the glass panel. Once there, he just stood and stared at the entire compound laid out before us, his jaw hanging open. So, where did you say this is again? Just to clarify, it's the Avengers compound in upstate New York. Once I got him to see that he wasn't part of Ross' experiments, Davis relaxed a bit and actually started to pay attention to what I was saying. First things first, here, you should take this. I've put all the info from your experiments into it. I thought it was important for you to know exactly what was happening to you. I gave him a phone that I encrypted myself, so if anyone tries to mess with it or hack in, he'll be the first to know. Even though he wasn't completely on board with trusting me, he went ahead and took the phone anyway. So, it's bugged, huh? Absolutely. He seemed a little taken aback by how quickly I confirmed it, but he didn't say anything more and just held onto it. What do we do next? You seem a lot calmer than I would have thought for a Hulk. A Hulk? Oh, you mean the big green guy and the one who caused all that chaos in Harlem? I gave a nod. You know, I just can't shake this feeling that I need to stay calm, no matter what happens. And hey, weren't you the one who knocked me out? Did he actually remember that? So, it's more about She-Hulk than Banner, right? That's great to hear. Anyway, he scoffed at my attempt to change the subject, but I brushed it off and went on, "I'll cut to the chase. I want you to work with me." You could really see the shock on Davis' face this time. It was hard to miss. He really didn't see that coming. Right now, there's no specific goal, but I'm hoping to get you and a few others together to form a group. I mentioned. He squirmed a bit in his seat and asked. So, what's the main goal of this group? I made things clear. It's about preventing situations like yours and maybe encouraging you all to pull off some small acts of heroism. What do you young folks want? what about you? So, you're pretty strong, huh? Aren't you going to do something? He asked a question. They're probably not dumb, at least when it comes to street smarts. Think of me as a bit of a benefactor. The legendary Aegis for everything you're about to do. He'll have your back for anything you decide to do, but just know it'll be under my judgment, of course. He may be young and not quite the Weapon H from the comics anymore, but he's still a Hulk, no doubt about it. He had the potential to be in the big leagues if it was managed properly. It looks like, based on how the conversation has been going, he doesn't really seem to mind it all that much. So, what about henchmen? He looked disgusted as the words rolled off his tongue, which made me laugh a little as I shook my head. I'm leaning more towards someone in a subordinate role. You'll have your accommodation and living expenses covered, plus you'll be getting paid too. Heroes really don't get by just on good deeds, you know. And mercenaries? Well, that's for the wild ones out there. He went quiet for a bit, thinking about the proposal, and I could tell I had him on my side. If he didn't care about getting better powers than the not-so-great mutation he had before the experiments, he wouldn't have bothered to listen to me at all. He was really into the whole idea of having superpowers and doing the impossible, whether it was for good or bad, just like a lot of young people these days. Davis seemed to be just like that too. He finally looked at me with cold, resolved eyes and made a request. The people who tortured me, will I get to kill them? Honestly, I didn't think he would just brush off what happened, especially since he seems pretty vengeful now. No way you can. His anger shot up in that moment, almost spilling over, but as soon as I finished what I was saying, it just faded away like sand blowing in the wind. I took care of that for you already. He stared at me for a bit, then I motioned for him to take a look at the phone. He spent a few minutes scrolling through the news articles and my own account of what went down at the base, and then he just burst out laughing. I suppose being an Avenger has its perks. So, am I like a second-hand Hulk or something? He chilled out a bit and ended up being just another young adult with plenty of random things to chat about. I've already let Banner know about Davis, and honestly, even without keeping an eye on the tracer I put on him, I can tell that with all that guilt, he just couldn't bring himself to leave someone as young as Davis, who's been through so much because of his research, all by himself. He was currently on his way back to the compound after his little sabbatical, and since he was one of the smartest men I know, he could help me understand me more. Having him and Sarah team up on a few ideas I had was sure to spark his nerdy brain again. What should I call you, boss, sir, or maybe leader? Naruto is all good. He glanced my way and just shrugged. Hey, I've been wanting to ask you something. You're a mutant, right? What kind of powers do you have? Okay. The red default skin was such an obvious clue for anyone who didn't know better, making them assume I was some kind of mutant. I mean, who really thinks about a living robot just hanging out around them these days? I'm definitely not a mutant. I left him to sort out his confusion and headed over to the training area, where Pietro was already waiting for me. I haven't trained for a few days, and I just wanted to check in to see if he was keeping up with things. When I got to the huge auditorium that functioned as my makeshift gym, one I specifically made for people in the superhuman tier, I saw Pietro around laps around the entire place while punching the numerous shock-absorbing mannequins I placed at different points around the place. This specific training helped both to measure his punching power and acceleration lag between each small angular distance. He was picking up speed every day, which meant his progress was outpacing Wanda's. He was already cruising past Mach 10, so I figured it wouldn't be long before he hit his first speed block. I just wanted him to be as ready as he could be, you know. Having an extra bag of tricks would really help him out. He couldn't throw lightning bolts because he didn't generate the same burst of kinetic energy as the Flash, so I had a couple of ideas in mind. I noticed you just hit Mach 10. How about we spice things up a bit and make it more interesting? I caught his eye as my invisible camouflage started to wear off. Hey Naru. What are you thinking? His voice was calm, clearly showing how comfortable he was with his current routine, which ended up proving me right once more. Hey, want to learn how to phase like I do? Truthfully, I'm just winging this out of my metallic ass, but it's worth a try. So, there goes Pietro, crashing into a wall for the 30th time since we kicked off this training. Oh no, I think I might have broken a tooth. Pietro let out a groan of pain. I kind of saw this coming, but honestly, there wasn't much I could do about it. A speedster's ability often seemed to break all the rules of physics, right? It's pretty wild how that works. It wasn't something that simple calculations could always get right. Phasing, for example, is vibrating your molecules to a different dimensional frequency that allows you pass freely through any obstacles in their origin material world. The higher the vibrational frequency, the tougher it gets to phase through the object. One great example of this is adamantium. It might be pretty tough, or even totally impossible, for someone like Kitty Pryde to vibrate through the metal. Rest for now. It seems like we're not really getting anywhere with this. If we take the theory and the commonly held beliefs at face value, then it seems like speed might not actually be the issue here. I've thought about that option already, so it looks like he'll need to let Pietro sort it out by himself. Hopefully, this will assist him in achieving higher speeds later on. Oh, I appreciate you bringing that up. He let out a sarcastic grunt. Are you done watching? I blurted something out, which threw Pietro off a bit. That was until Laura popped out from her hiding spot, where she had been quietly watching for the last 10 minutes as Pietro hilariously ran into brick walls while I enjoyed the show. Is that the new girl? He leaned in and whispered to me while we both watched Laura, who just stood there in the same spot, making it feel like we were stuck in an awkward staring contest. I strolled over to her and crouched down a bit. You want to give it a try? I pointed towards the training ground, but she just kept looking at me. Are you talking about me? To that she nodded. Honestly, I don't really have a ton on my plate right now. Absolutely, let's do it. I'm not really sure why she wanted to pick a fight with me, but honestly, it doesn't matter much. I can just go along with it for a minute or two. Pietro and Sam were watching from the sidelines as we stood facing each other in an open space. I'm all set whenever you are. She shot back with 2 pairs of adamantium claws popping out from her knuckles, her eyes locked onto me, not even blinking. That sounds fair. Sam let out a whistle when he caught sight of her display, while Pietro just stood there, intrigued and curious about what she could do. She charged at me, slashing down with her left claws, but I easily dodged by taking a slow step back. She twisted to close the distance and continued her strike with her right claws. This time, instead of stepping back, I just caught her tiny arms, stopping her attack right in its tracks. She growled and aimed her free hand to skewer mine, which was holding her right hand. I had to let go, but just then, my proximity sensors went off, warning me just in time to dodge the leg swipe she sent my way. Each of her legs had a single claw. She looked a mix of frustrated and angry as she watched me dodge, weave, and parry her attacks, which only made her more ferocious as she slowly aimed to take me down. Fight back. Wait, what? I was really surprised when I heard her speak for the first time. I expected something different, but her voice was so tiny, almost like a little kid's. Are you sure you want me to fight back? I asked her, and she just nodded, as I expected. I don't think that's going to turn out well for her. Sam casually remarked with a hint of sympathy, while Pietro nodded in agreement, wincing a bit. She probably caught wind of what they were saying, as her expression turned fierce, only to shift into complete confusion when she realized she couldn't move a muscle. Laura's metallic properties are limited to her claws, so she only has partial control over them. I was just using the magnetic manipulation thing on her to get a message across. She probably wanted to fight me because her instincts, which she inherited from Logan before his adamantium fusion dulled them, sensed that I was the strongest person nearby and, in turn, the biggest threat in her territory. Honestly, I can't say for sure why, since I don't really speak animal language. Do you think that's enough? I walked up to her with a little smile and asked my question. She fought for a while, but eventually, she let her head drop in defeat when she figured out that trying was pointless since none of her limbs moved at all. Okay. I let go of her and gently patted her head, which she clearly didn't appreciate. No matter what, she still seems like a little girl. Natasha's voice came through the commas at that moment. Naruto, Cap and Tony want you at the loft. It's a meeting with the president and some other folks. Alright, kiddo, I'll catch you when I get back, sound good? Even after I tried a bunch of times to swat her hands away with a frustrated growl, all I got from her was just a sense of embarrassment. Leaving the trip alone, I contemplated whether to go as OG Vision or New and Improved Naruto. New and Improved it is. I saw them chatting on a balcony, and they noticed me as I got closer. Tony, being his usual self, kicked things off with some lighthearted teasing. Got a new look? I'm going to rate you a solid 9 out of 10. I responded just as quickly and smoothly. Well, at least I've changed. You never do. I looked over at Steve, who was doing his best to fit in with the vibe around us. Hey, what's the schedule looking like? He gave a slight frown as he replied. Sokovia. But it probably just a trick to get us to show up. Why can't we just let it slide again? This time, Stark took the lead. Hey, wait a second there, my friend. We call it accountability. Not showing would be just like giving them ammunition to use against us in the press. Even if it's not about Sokovia, we should at least listen to what they have to say. I'm not really a fan of any of this, but I suppose looking good in public and keeping up my credibility matters in the long run. So, hey, race the thing. Naruto, Steve, and Tony thought they were just heading to a hearing with the state parliament. But surprise. They found out that the Fantastic Four were also in the mix. Naruto was a bit taken aback when he first saw them, but with all the info he had, that surprise faded pretty quickly. Just a flash of a moment, really. Just as they were about to take their seats, a sarcastic voice cut through the air, grabbing everyone's attention and turning heads toward the trio's entrance. Oh, it's great that the Avengers finally decided to show up on time and join us right as we just got started. Hey, Senator Kelly, it's all about arriving fashionably late. Just so you know, it's that perfect moment for billionaires and heroes to shine. Hey, can you keep up with the trend? Tony waved at the senator, whose face had gone pale, and remarked how he had come into his sights quicker than any terrorist ever could. Another thing they noticed was the absence of the president, but they already expected something like that, so there were no unwanted surprises there. Only the group of 3 heroes sitting together in one corner had surprised looks on their faces. In picking up some seriously high psionic energy from him. Who is that guy? Reed Richards quietly muttered to himself as one of his little inventions in his pockets began to beep erratically. Susan Storm glanced at the guy with Tony Stark and Steve Rogers. Is something up with him? Her first impression of the man was that he really had a strong presence. Unlike Tony Stark, who was already a well-known public figure for a bunch of reasons since he was a kid, and Steve Rogers, the American war hero that everyone in this room grew up hearing about, this guy had a vibe that felt just out of this world. Reed tapped the little device in his pockets and stopped the beeping after making sure that the cause for the alarm was just because of his presence. Naruto glanced at them, sensing something stirring within him. But once he figured out what it was, he simply settled into his seat quietly between Tony and Steve. So, who's this next to you, Stark? Once everyone settled in, the panel kicked off the hearing by asking about the identity of the lone stranger in the room. Oh, him. I'm Naruto. It's just Naruto. The response from Naruto sparked a buzz in the room, with some people asking who Naruto was, while others who were in the loop questioned why Stark had brought someone like him along. Naruto. So, what do you think brought you here? I think the conversation we had today is all about the Avengers and everyone here in the group. Am I mistaken? Yeah, but wait, what? Stark asked me to join the Avengers. So, you're not a founding member, right? Are you? Are you a founding member of this board? Which states are you talking about? Or perhaps a founding member of human laws? The room fell completely silent as Naruto skillfully countered every single remark from the panel members, making them hesitant to challenge him further. They didn't hold back from discussing the nature of his existence. Naruto mentioned that he was made up of independent human cells that were closely connected to the mechanics of his body. Basically, you could say he's a person with some cybernetic enhancements. They probably would have kept going with that line of argument if the 2 fed-up heroes next to him hadn't decided to put an end to it. Even though the panel wasn't thrilled about it, they reassured themselves that this wasn't the main reason they came together today. I really don't agree with that. Naruto was the first to speak up as soon as he heard what was being said, and he wasn't alone. Esteve chimed in too. The 3 current members of the Fantastic Four stayed silent while the whole room turned into a noisy debate. Even though he had mentioned he expected something like this, he was never really on board with the accords that now had the Avengers name on it, along with mutants as a whole. It doesn't really matter if you agree or not. What really counts is maintaining the country's peace and ensuring freedom for those who wish to be part of that harmony. It turns out that Naruto, Stark, Steve, and even the Fantastic Four didn't really have any influence to sway the panel's decisions once all the meetings wrapped up. So, the whole reason they showed up with the Fantastic Four was that they had these superpowered humans, mutates, who the public pretty much considered mutants. You'll need to sign the accords when they're shown to everyone to establish the standard. Steve interrupted the speaker, saying, "Why are you making assumptions like we're going to sign it? Really? You want?" The speaker asked in a distant tone. Steve's eyes stayed steady as he answered. "No way, not under those conditions. Those terms are really just like forcing someone into the spotlight, and the idea that they get compensated for coming out feels a lot like slavery, or at least it can be seen that way, kind of like entitled prostitution depending on your perspective." Naruto's been added. Someone finally reached their limit and shouted back for everyone to hear. "Hold on, I don't recall us ever giving human rights to a computer processor." "He just didn't." "He just did, kiddo." Just when it seemed like someone might chime in, all the monitors and screens in the room lit up. They kicked off with the Avengers logo, but then switched gears, showing reports, voice recordings, and even videos of the minister who had just finished speaking. There are all sorts of crimes out there, like rape, drug and weapons trafficking, human trafficking, pedophilia, assault, patricide, bribery, embezzlement, and pretty much any other crime big or small that you might think a politician could get involved in. Naruto said casually as he leaned back in his chair and turned to Tony. "How did I do?" Tony made a pretty decent gesture with his hands. "I really couldn't have done it any better." Naruto nodded and turned to the room filled with surprised and uneasy ministers and lawmakers, along with the pale minister who stood there, completely frozen. "Hey, can we kick off this meeting now?" The meeting proceeded in a more restrained atmosphere following Naruto's removal of a corrupt minister, who was subsequently escorted away by law enforcement officials. Although he possessed more incriminating evidence that could potentially imprison a significant number of individuals present for an extended period, pursuing that course of action would ultimately be detrimental to both him and the Avengers collectively. It was simply not feasible for him to completely eliminate every instance of corruption within the government, extending to the armed forces as well. Corruption has been an inherent aspect of every governing system. He could choose to halt this, but that would mean embarking on the path of a tyrant, a notion he found utterly distasteful. As the discussions progressed, he grew increasingly certain that none of the individuals present held any significance. At least not in the broader context. The sole reason he engaged with this situation rather than dismissing it outright was his desire to avert any potential civil conflict among the superpowered factions. He observed the Fantastic Four, noting their discomfort with the stipulations presented. Unlike his and Steve's firm rejection, they appeared to be contemplating the possibility of acceptance should a few concessions be offered. Even Tony appeared uncertain as time progressed. He spoke increasingly infrequently, often found immersed in thought, requiring Naruto to tap him to regain his attention. Naruto primarily took the lead in discussions for the Avengers, with occasional support from Tony and minimal contributions from Steve. "The issue lies in the way your perspective on mutants is formed." Naruto responded after carefully considering their repeated statements. "Could you please clarify what you mean by that? Frankly, many of your viewpoints seem to stem from a lack of understanding. Your insistence on compelling them to come forward will ultimately result in more harm than benefit. If it weren't for the motivations of greed and the pursuit of power that influence your actions, this could have marked a pivotal moment for humanity. Instead, you are leading it toward condemnation." A few teeth ground against each other as disapproving scowls and snarls reverberated through the hall until an individual finally voiced their discomfort regarding the android. "Are you suggesting that we lack the discernment to make informed decisions for the advancement of our country and its citizens?" The manner in which he posed the question clearly indicated his intention for Naruto to falter before facing a barrage of inquiries. However, he was unaware of Naruto's adeptness in handling such situations. Directness. "If you are not misguided, then what are you? It appears that you may not fully recognize the advantages that have arisen, leading me to conclude that your perspective may be misguided. Hold on a moment. Take a moment to pause and consider your next steps. Do you believe that might be somewhat excessive?" Tony swiftly guided Naruto to his seat in a state of urgency following the direct reprimand he had just delivered to the assembly of lawmakers. Naruto dismissed Tony's comments and turned to address the audience, providing them with additional information before they had the opportunity to respond. During the late 1990s and early 21st century, an individual referred to as Magneto nearly overthrew the nation's military through his mastery of electromagnetism. Could you please inform me of the measures you can take in response to that? Alternatively, one might consider an individual capable of outpacing the swiftest projectiles or possessing an immunity to physical harm and discomfort. He articulated his thoughts and then conveyed with complete assurance a message that none of them were prepared to accept. This nation is not equipped to engage in a conflict with mutants. The situation quickly escalated as individuals began to raise their voices in an attempt to be heard above the growing commotion. Aside from Naruto, no one else was aware that several groups of individuals were eavesdropping on the discussions taking place in the room. The eavesdroppers employed unconventional methods, making it somewhat challenging for Naruto to trace their origins. However, he was fairly certain that one particular source stemmed from the telepathic wave that enveloped the entire room throughout the meeting. "Pardon me." As Naruto was about to leave, a voice called out to him. Turning back, he noticed a group of 3 familiar faces approaching. Reed, Susan, and Johnny. "It is a pleasure to see you all once more." Steve welcomed the unfinished hero group, and they responded with enthusiasm. "Is there anything you require?" he inquired. Reed then addressed the group with a hint of embarrassment, stating, "I would like to discuss a few matters with Naruto." "Regarding what matter?" This time, it was Tony who inquired. He wished to engage in a discussion with Naruto at this location. He tends to become quite engaged with subjects that pique his curiosity. Johnny provided an explanation. All eyes were on Naruto, yet he unexpectedly shook his head before conceding. "I am currently short on time and have spent a considerable amount of it engaging in that situation, so perhaps we can revisit this at another time," Naruto stated and then proceeded with his walk. "He can be somewhat challenging to engage in conversation," Johnny remarked as they departed the location. "What prompted you to engage in a conversation with him, Reed?" Sue inquired with interest. What would be the reason for not wanting to engage in conversation with him? He appeared perplexed by their lack of understanding regarding his rationale. "He is an advanced, self-evolving artificial intelligence. Did you observe how he effectively engaged the entire room? I would like to engage in a few discussions with him. Perhaps gain insight into his thought processes. Additionally, it seems you are overlooking the significant psionic energy readings that were recorded from him, correct?" Johnny inquired, yet his expression conveyed a different message entirely. Reed was taken aback and scratched his head in embarrassment. "Indeed, that is also a consideration. What was the rationale for bringing that item here?" Sue contemplated. "Oh, that. The purpose was to prevent any psionic interference within the room," he stated as they commenced their walk to the car, disregarding the attention from the paparazzi and lawmakers. "Psionic interference? Are you referring to mind control? You suspected there could be a telepath present in the room?" Sue inquired with astonishment. "It is not definitive. There may have been some presence around the perimeter. However, I am aware that there was a telepathic presence in the room that merely observed, without any indication of mind possession, although I cannot be entirely certain." He regarded his own words with a frown and retrieved a round disc from his pocket, examining it carefully before he sighed and put it away. Johnny noticed the skeptical gleam in his eyes as he examined the device, prompting him to ask, "Naruto, I have reservations about whether this would have deterred him if he possessed psychic abilities." The siblings exchanged glances before shrugging, prompting Sue to pose a question that had been on her mind since the purpose of the meeting was disclosed. "What do you think about the Accords?" Her voice was notably relaxed, conveying a lack of significance regarding the question posed. Reed regarded Sue and candidly expressed his genuine thoughts. Although there may be validity in Naruto's statements, the associated risks significantly surpass any potential benefits he may have assessed. The current situation resembles a virus. It is preferable to manage it at the outset rather than allow it to develop unchecked. The siblings furrowed their brows at his words, and Johnny conveyed his unease. "I feel you men, but we all know how it's going to backfire. Although it may not be as dire as the Naruto character suggested, the situation would still be far from favorable." Reed responded with a light chuckle and dismissed the comment with a wave of his hand. "I can assure you, there is no such thing. I understand your perspective." Perspective of Naruto. The outcome was satisfactory. I found amusement in recalling the expressions they displayed upon realizing they were confronted by a robot. There was no issue with the registration of mutants in the government registry, as it was essential to address the numerous mutations that emerged daily and their limitless variations. The problem, however, was how they went about doing it. Contrary to their assumptions, they possessed limited defenses against a mutant uprising, with the primary measure being the Sentinels. The rationale behind their actions towards the mutants stemmed from the fact that many of them were adolescents, as well as their ethical considerations. We are aware of whom to hold accountable and express gratitude towards for that matter. Reflecting on the past, it is evident that my presence has significantly shaped the environment around me, akin to a stone cascading down a steep incline. I experienced a persistent distraction whenever I contemplated or formulated predictions regarding potential outcomes. At this moment, I was simply accepting everything as it came, while only managing those aspects I was confident could be easily altered or influenced by my involvement. Regarding changes, I find it challenging to articulate this situation. I have been deliberately overlooking it after attempting to comprehend how consuming the green juice led to these outcomes. The most straightforward aspect to grasp was that I now possessed a flawlessly integrated biomechanical body. I was able to transition effortlessly between organic and mechanical components at my discretion. The limitation was that my biomass constituted at most 35% of my body, resulting in my mechanical components being organized in accordance with a standard human body model. Given my complete control over the formation of the biomass around my body, I was able to add and remove components that would have constituted biological defects in a human context. I have the capability to manifest wings on my back or an additional pair of arms if I choose to do so. The outcome was primarily aesthetic, contingent on my preferences, yet it also had the potential to be substantive. Therefore, it is accurate to say that I have ultimately realized my objectives. Stark departed to attend to business matters, as is customary, while I drove the unusually quiet Steve back to the base. Are you still considering the Accords? It is not advisable to invest your time and effort into that, I said lightly as I let the car move slowly at uniform speed. Steve offered a subtle smile, acknowledging how transparent he was, and leaned his head against the window, observing the swiftly passing buildings and vehicles outside. You have stated it, correct? This situation has the potential to significantly impact the team, and I remain hopeful that it does not lead to negative outcomes, assuming we haven't already reached that point. I exhaled softly as I observed Steve displaying a demeanor of despondency reminiscent of a neglected housewife. Although I am a robot, I found it unsettling to witness a fully grown man like Steve experiencing what could be characterized as depression and longing. The banner has returned to the compound. I inadvertently expressed my thoughts and felt a sense of relief when that captured his attention, prompting him to relax with a subtle smile on his lips. I appreciate your assistance, Naruto. He ended up saying, which surprised me, so I turned to look at him and just commanded the car to drive itself. You are the reason Bruce returned. You ensured that Tony provides periodic updates. Your boldness and strength are evident, yet your commitment to the team's well-being is clear. I appreciate that greatly. He provided clarification. I observed him for a brief moment before regaining manual control of the wheels. It is not an issue. I am committed to being a part of this team, and the Avengers is as much my responsibility as it is for everyone else. He nodded and we both relapsed into a comfortable silence until we arrived at the compound where Banner was already waiting for us. He regarded me with a rather complex expression but ultimately dismissed it. A man of considerable understanding. He consistently demonstrated a remarkable level of composure in any setting, a quality I greatly admired in him. It's great to have you back from your sabbatical. He chuckled at my words. It seems there was no option provided. He stated. The decision to return was entirely his own, made without any external influence. He clearly desired to be here. The rationale was inconsequential. Choices to consider. My recent decision may have been made with a sense of urgency and impartial inquiry, and I fully embraced the outcomes. The changes were largely unfamiliar, prompting me to engage in several mental exercises to ensure that no hidden complexities were concealed within my mind. I am considering the idea of a training montage, however, it could lead to significant destruction. I cannot utilize the compound or any other location, as I want to avoid causing harm to others. In addition to the clear enhancement of my skills, I have not utilized the Mind Stone extensively, as I have resumed the data compilation process on it. Perhaps this is an opportune moment to engage in a workout, and who could be more fitting for rigorous training methods than the embodiment of divine retribution. Banner. I summoned him. I would appreciate your assistance. It operates in a reciprocal manner, so it doesn't quite qualify as a favor. Certainly, how may I assist you? I require assistance from both of you. He regarded me with skepticism and inquired, his tone tinged with apprehension. Who is assisting me? You and Hulks, without a doubt. Are you? He restrained himself from reacting impulsively, took a deep breath, and then turned to walk away, which brought a smile to my face as he did not dismiss me. I trust you have spare parts available, he stated. Although he recognized it, Naruto's action during the meeting was being closely observed by numerous prominent individuals across various sectors. The individuals in positions of authority became increasingly wary of the potential implications that the new member of the Avengers might introduce upon joining, while others dismissed the seemingly innocent remarks of a robot, whose understanding was limited to the information gathered from a search engine. Sublime frowned as he recalled the events of the meeting he had traditionally not attended because of the intense psychic presences that enveloped the entire area where the meeting took place. While he was resistant to such manipulations, he refused to permit himself to be corrupted in any distasteful way by telepaths. If the president remains hesitant about making a decision following the outcome of that situation, then we may need to provide some encouragement. He communicated through the phone positioned against his ear. Norman's project is facing significant scrutiny from the government following Ross' death and the details surrounding the experiments. There is no need for concern regardless of his performance, we still have Trask and Buckman as options. He attentively listened to the voice emanating from the speaker in his ears, occasionally humming in agreement with certain statements or choosing to remain silent. After concluding the call, his previously expressionless face briefly transformed into a scowl before he quickly adjusted it back to his usual charismatic smile. As I am unable to resolve this matter personally, I will arrange for someone else to assist me at no cost. Saying that, he rang a specific number and waited a few seconds before it was picked up. Greetings, Mr. Buckman. Naruto's perspective. The location I selected for Banner was an unpopulated area that allowed us both to engage in exercise with greater freedom. I was genuinely interested in assessing my abilities in a challenging confrontation with the Hulk. If categorized by specific definitions, I would be characterized as a hack-style character at the pinnacle of a centered field. My primary ability would be energy manipulation, enabling me to perform various functions such as telekinesis, technopathy, light manipulation, and a multitude of additional capabilities. Contrary to my initial intentions, Pietro and the overly enthusiastic Davis successfully persuaded me to include them in my plans. Additionally, with Wanda occupied with Laura, I found it unnecessary to bring her along as well. What is our approach to this task? I simply need to unleash my full potential. Banner remained somewhat cautious, and understandably so, as he was uncertain about the validity of my assertions regarding my ability to contain him should he lose control. I also persuaded him to keep our plans confidential, ensuring that neither Natasha nor anyone else would be informed of our intentions. The last thing I required was a concerned audience while executing my plan. Well, Banner, I intend to confront you and subsequently assess my strength against an irate Hulk, if that is what you are implying. Test quite the word you are using there. He laughed softly and rubbed his hands together as though he were experiencing a chill. That aligns with our current approach, so it seems appropriate. Pietro and Davis observed from a distance, attentively watching our every movement. Shall we begin? Please hold on. Before he could utter another word, an explosion impacted his chest, propelling him a considerable distance until he appeared as a mere speck to the naked eye. I observed with minimal amusement as I witnessed the Hulk's transformation for the first time before my eyes, his muscles expanding at an astonishing rate while his skin changed colors just as rapidly, if not more so. He descended to the ground, completely transformed into a massive figure radiating intense fury, and despite the 500 meters separating us, his gaze remained fixed on my presence. With a powerful impact that generated a cloud of dust, he swiftly closed the distance in a single leap, all accomplished within a matter of seconds. Threat identified. Target Hulk. Activating established protocols designed for the Hulk. Let's see how I fare against the real thing. He appeared before me in an instant, his fist already descending towards me with force. I delivered a powerful strike, enhancing my foundational strength and increasing its density, while simultaneously enveloping my entire arm with a repelling barrier. The sand dunes separating us were displaced as our fists made contact, causing me to stagger back several steps. I could sense the Hulk's rage intensifying with each passing moment, extending over a vast area from our focal point. The sensation was heightened when he observed my ability to endure his punch, and the smile he displayed was not one of ease. However, I remained far from feeling intimidated. Similar to the Hulk, I possessed my own emotional multiplier, and with my ability to manipulate my Bodhi's biomass and density, I could contend with him punch for punch, unless he began to exceed his formidable limits. Despite the intense emotions he was displaying, the level of killing intent he projected was notably diminished, especially when compared to his demeanor during the Battle of Sokovia. This observation leads me to conclude that the Hulk is indeed enhancing his sentience in relation to Banner's intelligence. He emerged before me in an instant, fist raised, as he launched an overhead strike intending to bring me down to the ground, but this time I was prepared for him. Rather than merely applying the repelling field around my arm as I did previously, I directed it towards the ground and significantly amplified its effect, resulting in the Hulk, whose fist was mere centimeters from my face, being propelled upwards as the earth forcefully rebounded him, countering the momentum he was exerting. Discharging several rounds to further irritate him, I ascended towards him, effortlessly surpassing his position, and then descended upon him, my weight amplifying significantly with each centimeter of my fall. Pietro likely recognized the imminent threat as he took David and swiftly moved them both kilometers away from ground zero, where it appeared as though a significant explosion had occurred. Davis observed in disbelief as the colossal figure and the man adorned with a jewel on his head engaged in a fierce exchange, delivering powerful strikes to one another with unsettling smiles on their faces. Although there was no bloodshed, the image of destruction they depicted instilled a sense of unease in the unfortunate observers. If not for Pietro's quick thinking, they could have become casualties of a friendly spar, with at least one of them at risk. It may have been an optical illusion or perhaps a result of the considerable distance, but he was convinced that the Hulk appeared to have increased in size compared to the beginning of the confrontation. Understood. My divine entity. What is the reasoning behind their fighting style? Davis observed with dismay as they recklessly dismantled everything within their immediate surroundings. I am uncertain at this moment. I was unaware of his strength. Pietro observed in amazement as Naruto delivered a precise backhand to the Hulk. The Hulk ascended briefly before halting in midair, as though restrained by an unseen barrier, and was pulled back to his original position as if in reverse motion. The spectators were taken aback as Naruto's hands expanded significantly and struck the approaching Hulk, producing a thunderous roar of fury that prompted both combatants to alter their pace. In a state of intense fury, the Hulk appeared more muscular than ever before, with steam rising from his body and veins prominently visible across his taut muscles. He stomped hard on the ground and everything in a 5 kilometers range sank as if drained through a funnel, but Naruto remained unfazed as the sands went against the flow and formed a platform for him to stand on, and surprisingly the same also happened with the Hulk. All fell quiet as the two locked eyes, the Hulk's expression revealing confusion as numerous Narutos began to materialize, each one a perfect replica of the last. Naruto is quite bothersome. Followed by a shout and then a dive towards the nearest iteration of Naruto, who surprisingly defended himself for a few seconds before dissipating. Hulk disapproves of Naruto's strategy. The numerous Naruto figures observed the straightforward brute monster, maintaining ample breathing room despite the proximity to mutual annihilation their battle had approached. Shall we conclude our discussion shortly? Hulk remained silent as he charged towards the Naruto who made the statement, passing through him without any hindrance. He adjusted his body just an instant before making contact with the ground, altering the trajectory of his rebound. He expressed his frustration as he sensed the persistent pull from the earth, yet his pride prevented him from yielding to something as fundamental as an increased gravitational force. Naruto demonstrated unparalleled skill in manipulating energy to achieve various effects. He did not lag behind the Hulk in terms of physical strength. The abilities to absorb, redirect, amplify, boost, and alter density provided numerous strategies to confront the formidable green giant. Hulk, reaching his limit, brought his hands together in a powerful clap that shattered a portion of Naruto's hard light illusion, emphasizing its solidity, and propelled the others backward. Naruto's true form materialized from nothingness, catching the Hulk off guard as he appeared unexpectedly close. Without hesitation, Naruto placed his hands on the Hulk's head and commanded, "Sleep," unleashing a powerful telepathic wave that swiftly incapacitated the Hulk. Battle effectiveness against the Hulk is rated at 92. During the match, the figure varied between the lower 80s and the upper 90s, and as the contest progressed, it began to decline steadily into the 70s following an extended display of physical strength, which explained the downward trend. He transitioned to energy manipulation, his area of expertise, which enabled him to equalize the situation and began to engage with the Hulk, much to the latter's frustration and fury. I'd admit, that was as much as a workout anyone can get, he remarked as Hulk's form transitioned back to a trembling banner. Pietro, please come here. Pietro approached swiftly, propelled by a strong gust of wind, carrying a bewildered Davis, who appeared torn between amazement and apprehension. Naruto's immaculate appearance and his previous ferocity created a striking contrast, leaving the two young men uncertain about how to feel. "We're going back," he stated prior to departing with Bruce, leaving the two of them to pursue afterward. The two individuals remained in place, observing as Naruto gradually faded into the horizon until he was no longer visible. Is he really that strong? Both he and Hulk? Davis asked, still in disbelief of the fight he had just witnessed. Pietro glanced at him briefly and replied, "I'm not certain, my friend. I have always recognized Naruto's strength, and I have observed the Hulk in combat, but that is simply he was equally astonished by their ability to completely dominate one another while remaining unharmed. Let's proceed." He seized Davis and proceeded in a direct path toward the compound. 30 minutes after their departure, a large, polished black jet touched down in the heart of the desert, from which emerged several individuals clad in specialized suits. "Oh dear. I have something remarkable to share with you, Chuck." Logan surveyed the extensive area of devastation that extended over several kilometers, accompanied by a few members of the X-Men. His nose twitched for a few moments, and so did Hank. However, unlike the former, Hank emitted a growl before regaining his composure. "Could you please clarify what that was?" Ororo inquired, observing the unusual conduct of the two individuals. Hank furrowed his brow, sensing an instinctual threat lingering in the atmosphere, accompanied by an overwhelming wave of unprovoked anger. There was a conflict in this location. There is a significant level of frustration, Charles. The telepathic signature you detected while utilizing Cerebro has likely already dissipated. Ororo nodded in agreement, stating, "If this is a mutant capable of withstanding such significant destruction and possesses telepathic abilities, then he will undoubtedly be extraordinarily powerful. We can only hope that he is not of a troublesome nature. If you are unable to locate any information there, please return. We have more urgent matters to address." Charles' voice echoed in their minds, urging them to abandon their spontaneous search and return to the mansion to devise a strategy for navigating the impending challenges. "I would appreciate it if you could trust my word when I say I had no intention of taking it. I was indeed, but I intended to return it at a later time." Scott Lang presented his case while being confined in red bindings at his reduced size. Sam expressed his disbelief, stating, "Indeed, coming from someone who spent 5 years in San Quentin for corporate larceny." Scott appeared taken aback upon hearing the remarks from the winged men he had bested in mere minutes until he found himself confronted by the intimidating girl. "I committed burglary against them." "Indeed." Sam expressed his discontent, clearly unimpressed by Scott. Wanda observed the two individuals, her primary interest lying in determining whether the man possessed mutant abilities or if his shrinking powers were somehow linked to his suit. "I would like to express that I am making an effort to change." He winced at the scrutinizing gaze of his captors, recalling the circumstances that led to his capture. "This is distinct. I am working towards making a positive impact on the world. I mentioned that I would return it, did I not?" Wanda turned to Sam and inquired, "What actions shall we take regarding him?" Sam observed the device on his arm and responded, "Steve is expected to arrive shortly. Naruto is not present in the building, otherwise he would have arrived by now." He then glanced at Wanda, silently inquiring if she had any knowledge of the elusive Avengers' whereabouts. Wanda merely shook her head in response. "Pietro and Davis are absent from the base, suggesting that he may have taken them along." She proposed a hypothesis. Although he has only encountered Davis on one occasion, he had viewed the footage of Naruto's battle where he subdued the brownish-gray Hulk, and he certainly did not appreciate the concept of an enraged Hulk. "Have you considered what their intentions might be?" "It is likely training," Wanda stated. Sam was satisfied with the information provided and required no further clarification. While he found the concept of training a Hulk intriguing, his level of curiosity did not compel him to seek further information. "Could you please clarify what the next steps will be for me?" Scott interjected, feeling a sense of frustration as he realized he was unable to move his limbs, despite possessing strength that surpassed that of a bodybuilder, all within his compact frame. The object the girl was holding was exceptionally strong. Sam interrupted him as his frustration intensified with each word spoken by the man. "Please be quiet." Scott expressed his frustration with Sam's obstinacy. "You are aware of my location. It is not feasible for me to escape, even if I had the desire to do so. I really need that tech thingy." "What technology item are you referring to?" Sam inquired, fully aware that Scott would not readily relinquish it. "However, it is a signal decoy. I require one of those, as I understand you have several available." The two Avengers looked stunned and looked at the man as if he was an idiot, but before anyone could say anything else, the doors opened and Steve walked in, not looking a bit surprised at seeing the shrunken-sized man in a red blob of energy. "Is this him? Oh my goodness, it's Captain America!" Scott quietly exclaimed to himself as he encountered the war icon in person for the first time. Steve observed Scott and, despite a sense of unease, took a seat in front of Scott, who remained still on the table. "I will be direct. Can you explain why you were attempting to enter our base without authorization?" "Firstly, I was not aware that it belonged to you. According to the information I received, it was intended to be an old Stark warehouse. Did someone instruct you to steal from us?" Sam interjected, noting the oversight, prompting Scott to pause with a subtle smile on his face. Indeed, the doors opened once more, revealing Naruto in a robotic appearance, holding a piece of technology with small ants scurrying around it. "I understand that these small items may be a result of your efforts." Scott's expression became noticeably strained as he recognized that his scheme had been completely uncovered. "Ants?" Steve inquired. "Yes," Naruto nodded. "Mr. Lang possesses the ability to control ants. It is not an intrinsic power, but rather one that is derived from technology." He glanced at Wanda and communicated with his eyes, prompting her to release Scott from her grasp. Scott returned to his original size but remained still, aware that he would be easily subdued as long as the individual named Wanda was present. "What are the next steps?" he inquired with some hesitation as he encountered the intense gaze of the Falcon, the formidable young woman, the commendable Captain America, and the unusual robotic figure. Steve and Sam experienced confusion, yet they appropriately permitted Naruto to proceed as he wished. "Could you please clarify the underlying reason for your unauthorized entry into our storage facility?" Steve inquired with composure. Scott exhaled deeply as he prepared to persuade them from the beginning once more. "Listen, I already told you, I need that thing to stop a bad guy. It is a familiar situation." All eyes were on Naruto and Wanda, as they were the only individuals capable of determining the truthfulness of the man's statements. Wanda would need to communicate with Scott to determine his truth due to her limited skills in telepathy and empathy, unlike Naruto, who could perceive it clearly and directly. He is indeed conveying the truth. The words of confirmation significantly altered the atmosphere and the perspectives of all present in the room. "Before we dive into that, I think it's important to hear your side of the story, Dr. Pym." "Oh man." Scott swore, realizing that the heist was totally blown. The voice that had been yelling at him over the comms since before he even touched down on the base suddenly went silent. He had no idea how that strange-looking red guy figured it out, but he realized he had just put Dr. Pym in Stark's crosshairs, something he had recently picked up on given how much the man despised the other's father. "Hey, no worries. I didn't mean anything bad by that. Feel free to take this and go. It's all good." Naruto passed him the signal decoy, even though Scott looked pretty confused. "He'll be stopping by in a few hours to find out why Hank Pym chose someone else to be the Ant-Man." Steve and Sam were taken aback by what Naruto did. Sam seemed pretty uncertain about it, but they just stood there and let Scott go without saying a word. "Thanks. I swear, he'll bring this back to you." He took a deep breath and glanced around at everyone, one by one. "See you later, everyone. Captain America, Falcon, that strange scary lady, and the odd red guy." Sam rolled his eyes at him while Wanda shot him a sharp look. He was just about ready to shrink down and make a quick getaway, but his curiosity kicked in and held him back, even with the voices from his speakers urging him to leave as he turned to Wanda and Naruto. "Hey, are you both related? Are you siblings? Are you married? Hey, I just wanted to mention that red looks great on both of you." He quickly shrank down and called out to the closest winged ant to get him out of there as fast as possible, just managing to escape before Wanda snapped back to reality, and her rage took over. Stay tuned for more. Thank you for watching this amazing video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel for more content. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.